Hello friends, in this video we're going to look at this Steinway upright piano. I recently bought this on Facebook Marketplace for $200. Cost me $550 to have it moved, as well as have my other piano moved to the basement. So this is the first of a series that we're going to look at this piano, and I'm going to make a few repairs on it. I'm not a piano technician by trade, but I have a lot of resources on YouTube and books and so on. This piano has a few specific problems that I'm going to try to fix. I may have a professional do that if necessary, if I don't have any luck with that. It's mostly in very good shape overall. It's over 100 years old. According to the serial number, it was built in 1917, literally during World War I. And what's interesting, it says in the casting, Steinway and Sons, New York, Hamburg. Well, it sure didn't come out of Hamburg in 1917, so it must have been made in New York. People usually think of Steinways as the premier piano of choice for grand pianos, but it turns out they also have made a lot of very good upright pianos, and this is one of them. Although most of the mechanism is quite old, it's been in good tune when I got it, and it still plays very well except for about 4 specific notes that have problems that need to be solved. So to give you an example, here's middle C. I've had a store brand studio piano for about 50 years, which is called Kingsbury. I haven't been able to find any information on that brand, but I think it's what they call a store brand piano, which is it's a piano produced by one of the major manufacturing companies, which in this case was Aeolian, and then they would put some sort of local brand on it, maybe for a department store or something. That's a studio style that only comes up to about maybe here on this scale. And with pianos, the bigger the better as far as sound goes. A lot of it boils down to physics. Basically, having longer bass strings is good, giving you a richer tone. And also on this one, the very high end of it is noticeably better than the other one too. They had kind of a muddy sound, and this has more of a clear sound up to maybe the very highest key. That sounds kind of muddy there, but this one right down from it has a fairly clear tone. When you go a few down, it's very clear. My goal in this video is not to show you how to repair pianos in general. I'm not an expert at that, but it's more a matter of how I'm repairing this piano. So I'm going to take you along on the journey with me to fix some of the specific problems that this has. This one, you can see the felt is missing on. It was originally kind of half torn and sideways, so I just pulled it off. There wasn't any reason to leave it on as is. So that'll need to be replaced. The fact that this sticks out a little bit, this damper isn't working at all. And one of the unique features of Steinway pianos is they have in this section this extra set of higher dampers. I think I've seen some more modern ones that may only have 4 or 5 of these, but this has the full set of 8, it looks like. So let's find that key. So the note itself plays fine, but we just don't get the damper that we're looking for. And here's another example. This one kind of sticks. So that kind of plays basically, but So there are some things that can be improved here. Now I believe this piano has been partly rebuilt in the past. For one thing, a piano could not possibly play this well 100 years later unless it had had a lot of maintenance along the way. And also some of the parts, like these, I'm learning the terminology, but I think these are called bridle straps. Those all look pretty new. You can tell a lot of the other parts are not new, like the hammers look quite old. You can see the felt that cushions the hammers coming back has pretty deep grooves in it. I don't know what specific problem that causes, but you know, the net effect is that they may not be quite as far forward as they should be by, let's say, 1/8 of an inch. So that's something I can potentially replace. It's hopefully a fairly easy job. Down here we've got some more damper problems, and even the ones that are, so that one's working, that's F. We go down to E, you can see that the mechanism isn't pushing the damper back in place. Go up, this one it's just plain missing, which is F sharp. And even if you look at some of these others, you can see that they should be a triangular shape, but they're kind of pinched from wear and tear on the strings. So I can imagine replacing some or all of these dampers in this lower section. I think that's a fairly easy job that a tinkerer like me can do. I've already lifted the top off of this. It has a couple of latches, one on each side, and then the whole thing lifts out for servicing. To give you more of an idea of the mechanism, we can put that down. And pianos are designed where this whole action, as they call it, is one assembly that can be lifted out as a whole. And the keys basically push on the bottoms of each piece of the assembly. So I'm going to do kind of a survey, take some notes of which keys have a problem, and maybe mark those with some tape or something. And then after that we can just undo these screws and lift this entire assembly out as one piece. Then I can put this on a workbench and work on each part individually. Kind of my immediate goal is to do a survey of what's needed and to begin to buy parts that I need to replace it. Like primarily these damper pieces is going to be the big thing. There might also be some mechanical adjustments I can make, like bending a wire or putting a spring back in place or something like that. Now, if I weren't a tinkerer, the sensible thing to do would be to call in a piano technician who would take this whole assembly off to his or her workshop and kind of make it better and then bring it back. The guy who owned this piano before told me that he'd bought it for $1,500, and if this was in tip-top condition it would probably be worth at least $5,000 or more. So it's definitely worth putting some amount of money into. By doing it myself, I'm partly just having fun with it until it stops being fun, and I'm also partly saving money maybe. I think the parts cost of fixing this is pretty minimal, let's say $100 or so. The labor of having someone do it might be in the several $100 range, I don't really know, or you know, on the high end up to $1,000. So whatever money I end up putting into this, it's going to be money well spent. The price I got on this I consider to be extremely good for the fact that this is a Steinway upright. So these things hold their value. The Steinway name is just really valued in pianos, and for good reason, which is that even after 100 years this is a really top-rate piano, except for the specific problems that it has. And in terms of sound and action, it's really a vast improvement over my studio piano that I've had for about 50 years. One thing I just realized looking at this is when you see the color difference between this kind of gray here versus more of a white color here, these have been reconditioned at some point. It's kind of a shaving down process. These have small grooves in them that are worn by the strings, but they're not that severe. So this has been played significantly since it was reconditioned, but the hammers themselves I think are still in pretty good shape. The piano sounds a little on the bright side to me, but I'm not really an expert at that. There are things you can do to, they call it needling, where you just kind of loosen up the felt by pushing a needle tool into the front of the hammers, and then that would kind of reduce the bright sound by making the hammer a little softer. So that's a possibility. But my first stage is really a survey of what needs to be done to this, and also cleaning of anything that's any dirt that's accumulated inside. It actually looks pretty clean for the age, aside from, let's say, 5 or 10 years worth of dust accumulation from the last owner after it was reconditioned. This also has ivory keys on it. Nowadays no modern piano is made with ivory keys due to the fact that elephants are endangered, and plastic has been available as a substitute for many decades. So but a piano that's 100 years old like this might very well have ivory keys, and you can see that, like this grain pattern, that's a natural feature of ivory. We've also got a lot of dirt and accumulation that can be cleaned off, and these have also yellowed with age. So a possibility is to replace these with modern plastic keys. There are even fake ivory keys that you can buy that are actually plastic. I may not go that far, but in any case that would be a second or third stage, because these keys are just fine the way they are, with one exception, that this C, you probably can't see it in the video, but it's actually noticeably raised above this part. So this part is maybe a 1/16 of an inch higher. That's kind of in the category of an annoyance for me. That's not really too important since I'm not any kind of high-level player. Another problem, that some of these keys have chips on the front of them. That's more of a cosmetic issue than anything. So one option, if you can obtain used ivory keys from a vintage piano that were harvested out of one that got junked, maybe some of these could be replaced with real ivory, but I'm not too worried about that for now. My next stage with the keys is basically just to clean them. I've been researching the cleaning methods. We'll talk about those later. I'm going to do a quick chromatic run down all of these. Since all the problems are really in the lower 2 octaves, everything should be fine for a while, and you'll kind of hear things begin to hang on and resonate. So right now we've got, let's say I pick this C. There's a kind of a lingering sound, which is some of the other keys that are not damped. Basically they resonate in sympathy with the one that's being played, if the harmonics match up in some sort of mathematical method. So now I'll just do the chromatic going all the way down the keyboard. So I think, oh, here's our C sharp that doesn't have a damper on it. So that hangs on for a long time. I'll just manually damp it with my hand. Now in terms of tone, to me the bottom octave of this sounds really good until you get maybe to the last few notes. We'll just do a few of those. And my other piano has kind of a muddy sound in this range. Maybe these last few are kind of muddy. Like, to me the lower three sound kind of muddy, but you know, you're never going to use the very highest and lowest keys on a piano anyway, unless you're some sort of professional playing an exotic piece. But now to show you the sympathetic resonance, here's F sharp, which is the one that doesn't have the damper. So I'm going to manually damper that. We'll do another F sharp up here. So this key works correctly in itself, but it's going to make the other one resonate. Which we can shut off by manually dampening it. Or damp it, I guess. So the farther away you get in pitch, the less the resonance affects it. So if I go down, here's the one that's a problem, this F sharp. I go up one octave. And I can even go down one octave. That might even have a greater resonance. So even if you don't play these keys that are not damped properly, it still has an effect on the piano. Like I'll just play an F sharp major chord. See, all that keeps going. And since we've got other problems here, this is C sharp. At this point I've gone through every key and put a little bit of painter's tape on each hammer that has a problem of some kind. Most of these are the damper problems we talked about earlier. Some of these are like this one, if you play it lightly it never hits the string. And this one next to the bottom is just a little bit hard to push because I think that one damper is rubbing against the other. So those are things to look at as we go, but really the dampers are the big issues there. Up here, this one sticks. I think that could be resolved by bending the wire a little bit on these other dampers, or it may be that the hammer itself looks nominally correct to me, but it may be that like here at the very bottom of this wire it kind of sticks on that point, so that could be a really simple fix of just bending the wire a little bit. So we've got a variety of problems here, but they're all pretty minor in terms of how difficult they are to fix. The one thing we don't have in this piano that we wouldn't want is some sort of major problem, like one of the things that's more or less a death knell for a piano is if you have a cracked soundboard, and this one doesn't have any buzzes or rattles, which is a good sign. Now here's another thing I've forgotten about that's kind of fun. We have past marks in it. Sometimes piano tuners write down when a piano was tuned. So here we've got some dates from 1943, 1946, and 1963. I'm sure it's been tuned and serviced since then, but maybe whoever did it didn't bother to write down like all the others have. So I'm going to definitely add my mark onto this at some point, even though I'm not really a piano technician. But one thing's for certain, this piano will outlive me. An additional thing to check at this point is the pedal operation. That can easily be adjusted if needed, but it looks to me like it's fine. Basically all the dampers lift off when we do the sustain pedal, and then the soft pedal, as it's usually called, is working correctly of bringing this whole rail forward. You can see that. So we're doing fine on pedal operation. Probably nothing to do there particularly. Now another thing to look at repairing is the piano bench. You can see this has a lot of visible wood grain on it. It's been refinished nicely. The wood is kind of rough looking, but maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. The lid works out nicely. Looks like the hardware, like hinges and things, has been replaced on this at some point. I happen to have my piano tuning tools in here. Here's a little piece of felt that I broke off. I just put that in there just in case, but probably don't need it. This is kind of a high-end feature I've never seen before, is a compartment to separate maybe two piles of music here. One problem this has is it's a little bit wobbly. You can see there's a gap here, and I suspect there's a screw or something to tighten or maybe re-glue here. Yeah, that rotates. So this isn't really providing as much structural support as it's supposed to. Have to figure that out. Well, I put the pieces back together here, and it's ready to go again with the tape inside on some of the bad keys. Turns out I found out the obvious, which is that you can't play it with a piece of music with it taken apart. So it's easy enough to take apart and put back together like I had it. This is really well designed in terms of servicing, as pianos usually are. They have to be kind of taken apart to a limited extent in order to be tuned and so on. So in the time since I shot the last footage, I've played this a lot, and basically the dirt and grime on the keys has kind of been annoying to me as I played it. So my next step, I think, is going to be to take this apart at the key level and then clean off each key. That's something I mentioned earlier in the video, but that'll be kind of the main feature of our second part of the video. So this ends the first part of our series on this Steinway Model K upright piano from 1917. Please be sure and like and subscribe and hit that notification bell if you'd like to follow the series as it goes on. Probably have multiple parts over the next month or so. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.